Get Out doesn't feel scary because it's unrealistic. It feels scary because it isn't. The imagery may be jarring, the science may be impossible, but the fear it taps into is real. The quiet and suffocating loss of control. Get Out was released in early 2017 by Universal Pictures, marketed under the horror thriller category. The Oscar-winning film was both written and directed by Jordan Peele, marking his directorial debut and just his second ever screenwriting project, the first being a comedy, starring Keanu Reeves as a kitten. It's hard to believe that someone who used to create this for a living—
Shut up, Mom! Silence from you! Okay. You're cut off from talking!
would go on to author the likes of Get Out, Nope, and Us, all incredibly complex and psychological projects, films that are deliberate, thoughtful, and unsettling. Get Out doesn't feel like a typical horror movie. There are no immediate, overt threats, and there is no sudden violence.
In fact, for most of its opening, nothing really that wrong is happening. Sure, some of the conversations may be awkward, but there's nothing scary about that, right? So what actually makes Get Out so unsettling? And why does it feel so different from most other horror movies? Most modern horror films rely on immediacy, loud sounds that go to quick cuts and sudden movements and jump scares. Their goal is simple: startle the audience by creating fear in a single moment. And briefly, it works. The fear hits, but then as quickly as it came, it disappears and disappoints. Get Out isn't interested in that kind of ephemeral fear. It doesn't want to scare you instantly. It takes its time. It wants to set up a realistic environment that forces you to be uncomfortable. The true horror of Get Out is the gradual loss of agency we, the audience, experience vicariously through the protagonist, Chris. And what's interesting is, that loss of control doesn't start with anything violent or flashy. It just starts with people talking. When Chris first arrives at the Armitage house, everything seems fine. Rose's parents are welcoming and polite, and if anything, her parents are trying a little too hard.
I would have voted for Obama for a third term if I could. Best president in my lifetime, hands down.
I agree.
The comments they make aren't aggressive. They're framed as compliments, but they don't feel like compliments. They make you feel just a bit uncomfortable. And throughout the film, that unsettling feeling keeps growing. Take, for instance, the garden party scene. At first, things seem pretty normal. Friends arrive at the house and greet the Armitage family. Everyone smiles and seems very happy. But then, everyone meets Chris, and they don't treat him like a guest. They treat him like an object, like something to look at, something to evaluate. The questions they ask him get more and more specific, invasive, and physical. Guests comment on his body, his strength, and his genetics, and the whole time, their tone stays constant. It stays calm and friendly, which somehow just makes it worse. It makes the scene feel so unsettling. In that garden party, as Chris constantly grows more uncomfortable with the questions from the guests, he finally finds someone familiar he can talk with, Logan. At first, seeing Logan at the drinks table feels like a moment of relief for Chris. He found someone who looks like him, someone he can relate to. But even the conversation with him doesn't feel right. His tone is off, and his posture is stiff. The way he speaks feels rehearsed, like he's performing something rather than actually saying it. And then, just for a second, everything breaks.
Get out!
There, for just a moment, the film drops its act. Everything up to that moment has felt controlled. Every smile, every compliment, every interaction. But with Logan's outburst, finally, something real comes through. And that interaction hits. Not because it's loud and aggressive, but because it confirms something that the film has been building this whole time. Up until then, nothing has actually happened to Chris. No one has threatened him or touched him, but he's already grown uncomfortable and unsure. He's already starting to lose control of the situation, and that's what makes this kind of horror so effective. It forces you to realize that you were never really in control to begin with.
Get Out doesn't just tell us something is wrong. It teaches us how to see it. Because from the very beginning, the film's cinematography aligns us with Chris, not just as a character, but as perspective. Chris is a photographer. He doesn't just look at the world, he studies it, frames it, searches for meaning in small details most people would ignore. And the film begins to mirror that. Wide shots place Chris in open spaces, but instead of freedom, they create distance. He's often pushed to the edge of the frame, surrounded by negative space, visually separated from everything around him. Even before anything is wrong, he doesn't belong. Get Out was Peele's firstborn, so to speak, and with that came a kind of creative freedom. In that freedom, you start to see an obsession. Eyes. How they move, how they stay still, how they reveal intention, or the absence of it. Take Georgina. Nothing violent is happening. She pours tea. She's calm, but her eyes flicker. For a brief moment, she phases out, and the illusion breaks. The same thing happens with Logan. His words are controlled, his posture is composed, but his eyes, no recognition, no discomfort, no fear. Just something hollow. And that's what unsettles Chris. Because fear would make sense. Fear is human. If they showed even a glimpse of it, he could connect with them, understand that something is wrong. But instead, there's nothing there to meet him. And then the dynamic shifts. At the party, everyone is looking at Chris. The camera lingers, eyes locked onto him, studying him, evaluating him. He's no longer the observer, he's become the subject. The photographer becomes the photographed. And then briefly, the truth breaks through. In sudden, fractured moments, their eyes change, not empty, but something trapped beneath. Which is why the film keeps returning to Chris's eyes. Even as if everything else is taken from him, they remain. They feel, they react, they know. And that's the horror. Chris doesn't just lose control, he's forced to watch it happen. All of this builds to the film's most terrifying idea, the sunken place. The horror of Get Out isn't just physical, it's psychological. When Chris is hypnotized, he doesn't disappear. He's still there, still conscious, still aware. But he can't move, he can't speak, he can't act. Instead, he falls, suspended in darkness, watching the world through a distant frame, like a screen. And this is where everything comes together. Throughout the film, Chris is defined by his eyes, by his ability to see, to observe, to understand. But here, that's all he can do. He becomes nothing but a spectator, forced to watch his own body from afar, forced to witness his own loss of control. It's not just helplessness, it's awareness without agency. And that's what makes it so disturbing. Most horror gives its characters a chance to fight back, to run, to scream. The Sunken Place removes that. Chris doesn't just lose control of his body, he's trapped inside it. His eyes stay open. He sees everything, but he can't do anything. And in that moment, the film's central fear becomes clear. Not just being controlled, but being aware that you are. The Sunken Place isn't just a plot device, it's a metaphor for silencing, for marginalization, for being pushed into the background while someone else takes your place. Visually, it's simple: a body suspended in darkness, a distant screen, a man watching his life from far away. But that simplicity is what makes it so effective, because it feels real. If the cinematography teaches us how to see through Chris, the Sunken Place forces us to become him, aware, awake, and completely powerless.
What makes Get Out so terrifying isn't the violence, but rather the process. Control is taken slowly, almost invisibly, until it's already gone. A comment feels off, a look lingers too long, and by the time the horror becomes clear, it's too late. Chris sees everything, but that awareness doesn't save him. Because Get Out isn't about failing to see what's happening. It's about seeing it and still not being able to stop it. And that's what makes it more than just horror. Because that loss of control, being watched, being reduced, being silenced, doesn't just exist in the film. It reflects a real, lived experience, one where awareness doesn't always come with power. That's why The Sunken Place hits so hard. It takes everything the film has built, perspective, observation, identity, and turns it into a prison. Awareness without agency, presence without control. And in the end, Get Out leaves us with something far more unsettling than fear. Not the idea that we might lose control, but the realization that we never really had it.